Hi everyone, Shannon here, and I wanted to drop you just a super quick, super inspirational 2-minute thoughts on faith that has to do with prophetic words and moving in your prophetic gift, moving in a prophetic space. Several of you on here are walking through our Unlocking the Woman Within journey with us, where we're asking God to awaken gifts inside of us that we didn't know were there. And one of the really neat places that God has been moving my heart into, is this just prophetic ministry. This idea that, we know that God speaks to us, we feel it, we hear it, we know it. But when God begins to tap on your heart with messages for someone else, that's like an entirely new ball game, right? Because that's really an area of faith. Like, it's easier to lean into a word that God gives you than it is to lean into a word that God gives you for someone else, right? Because then you start to question that whole, what if I'm wrong? What if I get it wrong? What if I look ridiculous, right? And so God's really been building my spirit in this prophetic ministry space, and I've been asking him to. Like, I've been praying and asking God, I want to be used in this way. So if that is you out there right now, if you are walking through this Unlocking the Woman Within series with us, and you are asking to be used in this space, I wanted to pour some incredible encouragement into you today. And this will likely take a little bit more than 2 minutes, but hang with me because it is totally worth it. So as I've been exploring this space with God, I have gone to ministry meetings, I've been reading my Bible, I've been reading books specifically on learning to move in the prophetic space. And I know some of you are thinking, well, we just have to pray and ask God to use us in that space and then walk out in that. But I find that listening to leaders in this space sometimes helps me. It encourages me. It gives me skills. It gives me all different things. So one of the things that I continue to find is that all of these people who move in powerful prophetic ways continually talk about triggers that God uses. And I'm reading this one book right now, and I'll share it with you in the comments, but I'm reading it at night with my son. And basically the idea is that you read about all these different ways that God can use different things in your environment or in your space to trigger you to hear a prophetic word from him, right? So the first chapter we read about talked about how someone's name, how God gives us names with intention and purpose, and that none of us have our name by accident, but that God actually poured a prophetic word for us into the very meaning of our name. And so as you begin to learn what different names mean, sometimes God will use that as a trigger to give you a prophetic word for someone. And it was this really neat thing to explore. So then the next night we were reading the second chapter, and when I say we, this is a space that I sit with, I intentionally sit with my son every night, and we read through a chapter and we read through examples, and then we do the prophetic activation. And as I've been watching some of these Zooms and watching some of these ministry leaders teaching on this subject, I'm continually hearing these words, prophetic activation exercise. And the idea behind that is that you're doing these little exercises to train yourself to develop an understanding of how easy it is to hear God speaking into your heart for yourself, for someone else, for all of these things, right? And like I said, we're talking a different ball game for me and my spirit when we talk about prophetic words, because it's easy for me to lean into a message that God gives me for myself. I find it very challenging to lean into a message when God says, I want you to give this message to someone else. Like, I begin to kind of shake in that shaking courage space. So I'm walking through this, and this week I caught a few of the Zoom episodes that had to do with prophetic ministry and angels and all of that. And one of the activation exercises that they gave us was this picture, okay? And so they gave us this picture, and they said, I want you to ask God to pull out something, to point out something in this picture and speak to you through that. Like, ask God to point something out. So for me, the reflection of the mountains really stood out, right? And then you were supposed to ask God to reveal a message to you through that thing that he was pointing out in the picture. So as I began to sit there, I heard God begin to speak to my spirit. And he was talking to me about his goodness and trusting in his goodness. And I wrote down in my journal, because if you're following us on our social media page, we're doing chicken scratch journaling. And so I grabbed my chicken scratch journal and I began to write in it. And I was like, you know, God, what's challenging, and what I see in this picture that reflects something in my own spirit, is that I can see your goodness plain as day in the mountains. Like in the places that you've provided for, I can see your goodness plain as day. But there's still these areas, and that's the reflection of the mountains, right? There's still these areas that they're a little blurry, that I can't quite see your plan, that I'm a little nervous because I can't see it clearly. And I'm looking at the mountains and I'm saying, I see your goodness all over everything you've already provided. So I know you are a good and faithful Father. But this part right here that I can't quite see clearly, I'm still nervous in this space. I still have some anxiety. I'm still kind of shaking about this. And so I write this all in my journal, and I'm not speaking anything. I'm purely just writing this all in my journal. I close it up and I say to my son, okay, let's set all of our stuff down, because he was off reading a book. And I said, let's do our prophetic exercise that we do every night out of the book I'm going to share in the comments. And so that night, we began to walk through the chapter that we were walking through, talked about how God can give us physical things that are triggers for a prophetic word. Images, whether it be a vision that he gives us in our thoughts, or whether it be something that we actually see in our physical environment that triggers a prophetic message, triggers us hearing a prophetic message. And I remember asking God, can it really be this easy? Like, I keep hearing all these people who move in prophetic ministry, they keep saying, you know, God can use a trigger of a name. God can use a trigger of a color. God can use a trigger of something that someone is wearing. They keep talking about this, and I just keep thinking, God, is it really that easy? I know it's that easy to hear your voice, but is it really that easy to get a prophetic word for someone else? And I'm asking God, can it really be that easy? So I walk through this chapter with my son, talking about how God can give us visions or objects in our environment that give us a prophetic message, right? And we're sitting there and we're walking through this chapter, and it's giving examples and all of that. And then the prophetic activation exercise tells us to close our eyes with someone else and ask God to give us a picture, an image for that other person, an image that will trigger a prophetic word for that other person. So I instruct my son, I'm going to close my eyes, you close your eyes. When you have your image, I want you to put your hand on my arm and let me know, because I may not be ready yet. So I very quickly feel my son put his hand on my arm. And this is something I want to encourage, a space I want to encourage you guys with. Children are incredible. Like, they don't filter out the words, trying to make sense of them, trying to make them fit in a box, trying to understand them. They don't filter it like we do. And they hear so powerfully from God. We hear the same powerful way, but we have this tendency, like I'm sharing with you, to want to make sense of it, rationalize through it. We have a natural fear that we're going to get it wrong, right? So my son puts his hand on my arm and he says, can I have a notebook? Because I don't really feel like that I can describe the word that, or the vision that God gave me for you. So I give him a notebook and he draws out these mountains, right? But then he goes, no, that's not right. That's not the way God showed them to me. So he flips to the next page and he draws out the mountains again. And he says, okay, I'm ready. And this is the picture that he shows me. And he says, the reason why I couldn't show you the first one was because I forgot to put this big crevice right here. And I said, oh, okay. And so he said, I don't understand why God gave me this message, but God wanted me to tell you to take this picture and flip it upside down and see that either way, it's the mountains. Either way, it's the mountains. Now, if you are like me, I was sitting there going, holy wow. God is saying that his goodness and his faithfulness is in what I see and what I can't see, because either way, they're the same. Either way. So I'm sharing this with you guys for two really powerful reasons. I promised you guys that as we walk through this year of unlocking the woman within, as we walk through this year of learning together, growing together, and asking God to set us on fire, I promised you that I would share with you what I'm learning in this space. And I learned two things in that moment. Number one, it is really that easy. It is really that easy to not only get a very powerful message from God, but it is that easy to get a powerful prophetic message for someone else. And all we have to do is be childlike in our faith and believe that we are hearing from God. Because I told my son that night, I said, not only did you just share a very prophetic message with me from God, but you have also, this is a very powerful confirmation for you. You are hearing the voice of God. You are seeing the visions that he's giving you. And so I want to encourage you guys. It is that easy. Like I am learning, it is that easy. All we have to do is have faith that we are hearing him, and we can ask him for confirmation. Like there's been so many times I get prophetic words for someone else and I ask God for confirmation. These are beautiful, incredible moments, and our God does not fault us for asking for confirmation. So I just want to encourage you guys, we can trust God in his goodness, we can trust him in the unknown, and we can trust him in the space of walking through prophetic ministry and growing. All we have to do is become childlike. All we have to do is sit in his presence, ask him for confirmation, and then step out in faith that he is truly speaking to us and through us. So that's the message I wanted to share with you guys today. It is really awesome. I hope you guys got just an incredible nugget out of that. I hope you feel a fire stirring in your spirit, and you just begin to pray over your own walk and say, God, use me in that space. Use me, grow me, use me, stretch me, push me out of my comfort zone, because I want to walk in radical, courageous obedience. So I hope you guys have a great weekend, month ahead. I mean, God is just setting us on fire. So have a great day, guys. Thanks for hanging out with me. I will see you again next time.